Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I recently watched a video by a booktuber. His name is Wick Calloway. And the name of his video was something like, "No one writes about these topics." And he basically was talking about all the different themes that he wishes would come up more in books. And I thought it was just such a brilliant topic. A lot of things came to mind as I was watching his video. I actually asked him if it would be okay for me to basically take on the same topic and give my answers, and he said okay. I wish I could tell you that I'll link his video in the description box, but behind the scenes, things are not that simple, okay? I'm having issues. There's something glitching in my YouTube studio where when I try to put links, they don't turn blue and they're not clickable. So I will make sure to have his name on the screen. First name Wick, W-I-C-K, last name Calloway, C-A-L-L-O-W-A-Y. So a lot of things came to mind when I was watching the video, because yes, there are themes that are of interest to me that I feel like I don't find too often in books. So I found 3 that I wanted to discuss with you today. So the first one is the theme of trauma and the quirks related to somebody's trauma, right? Because we do find books where somebody gets traumatized because somebody died or there was an accident or whatever. And usually the way it plays out is the person is either angry or becomes severely depressed or something like that. But what I would like to see more of is these little quirks that happen as a result of the trauma, like something very unique to that person's trauma and the way it has affected their brain in funny ways. An example of this would be A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This is a novel that takes place during the French Revolution. And, you know, at that time, basically, interestingly enough, the people were hungry and they got really, really angry. It's basically the long and short of it. And so a lot of people who were in the higher echelons of society ended up thrown in jail, and so that caused a lot of chaos. One of the main characters is actually a physician who was in jail for a very long time. And what I like about the way Dickens describes it is he gives you a detailed description of exactly how the brain somehow found a way to cope with the trauma of being in jail, of being hopeless. And so what this physician did was, which he didn't really consciously do this, but his brain kind of created an alter ego, another identity where he was a shoemaker. And so he started working on making shoes in his cell and obsessing over, okay, I got to get this order out because this person needs this pair of shoes, and completely zeroing in and focusing on this one task and almost blocking out everything else, like the fact that he couldn't work as a physician, the fact that he couldn't get in touch with his family, the fact that he couldn't be free. He kind of blocked all that out and just focused on this idea that I'm a shoemaker. This trauma response is still a part of him as the story continues and evolves later on in his life, and how it resurfaces under certain circumstances, like when he feels a sense of danger or he feels less safe, then that identity steps in and takes over. And it's fascinating to see how all this plays out and how the people around him have to adapt to him switching to that alter ego. So I thought that was very well done, and I wish we had more books where they show you the initial trauma, they show you the specific, very creative and unique ways that the brain finds a workaround, and then you follow the character and see what happens to that trauma response. I just thought that was fascinating. And I'm actually planning to discuss 2 nonfiction books that I've read recently that talk about trauma, because that's a topic of interest to me. And so all this to say that it's kind of rare to find something that kind of really goes into detail as to how the brain operates and how the brain blocks certain memories or creates new identities to help a person survive. I really like that, and I would like to see that more in books. So the second topic that I thought about that I don't see very often in books is the idea that a person can have a dream and wake up, and somehow that dream will end up playing a pivotal role in that person's journey. So the dream leads to some type of transformation. That could be because the dream reveals information that their brain was almost hiding from them. Or it could just be something like an emotionally cathartic moment that happens in the dream that then allows the person to reconnect to their emotions. And so I would say the only example I could think of this was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. In this book, there is a dream that plays a big role in the transformation of the main character. So I felt a very strong emotional connection to the main character. The protagonist in this is a teenage boy who loses his mother in a terrorist attack, and it's kind of a coming-of-age story following him through his teenage years into adulthood. And it gets really, really messy because of just how traumatized he is. And I really like how she gave center stage to the dream in bringing about a transformation in the character. And I have to say, I have not seen that too much. I would say once in a while, there'll be a dream that kind of confirms what's going on. Like, let's say if somebody is scared of something, and then they'll have a dream of that same thing or that same person, and the dream will be scary, so the fear is there when they're awake, and when they're asleep, it's not really anything new. But I like the idea of a dream that brings about a change in the character and plays a role in how the action moves forward. I can also think about Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, where she opens the novel with a dream, but that's more of a mood setting type of dream with a little bit of foreboding, but the reader doesn't really know what the story is about and the significance of the place that she mentions in the dream. So it doesn't really have an effect in terms of bringing about a transformation or anything like that, but it's just more of a mood setting dream. So yes, I think I'm interested in dreams in general, and I would like to see a novel where the dream, I would say, has an entire chapter devoted to it and ends up helping the protagonist come to a realization, which then becomes cathartic for them. I would like to see that in a novel. I haven't seen that too much. And then the last one that I thought about is slow and detailed character evolution. I think a lot of books will show that, okay, so a character was this way and then something happened and then now they're different. So it's more of a switch. A little bit like in Frankenstein, he was a good creature, but then he gets abused and he changes. And I think a lot of books are like this, where there's a critical event that happens and then the person changes. But it's kind of like a very big contrast between these two completely different characters. What I like to see is something more detailed and more subtle, where you start out with a character being a certain way, and then you have a series of events that slowly push them in a slightly different direction. And an example of this would be one of the short stories in this collection, The Pastures of Heaven. by John Steinbeck. One of the stories towards the end is the story of this man who is in his 30s living with his parents who had all these ailments. And so they sit in these two recliners in the living room, and they're always complaining that they have pain from their arthritis, etc. And they pretty much are homebodies. They don't like to go out a lot. And so the son kind of adapts to how they are and conforms. And so then when the parents pass away, there's an evolution that happens, and it kind of is a complex evolution that comes in stages, and I just thought it was brilliant. So one of the things that happens is there's a metaphor between the house and his mind, right? So in his mind, he's trying to compartmentalize his parents and what his life was like when they were alive, and then his life now, and he's almost blocking one from the other. And then he does the same thing at the house, where he closes the door where they had the recliners there, and he's like, I don't want to go to that room anymore. And so there's sort of this weird rebellion that takes place where he doesn't want to be that person that he was when they were alive, and he starts going out a lot. But at the same time, he's fighting his own demons because he can still hear their voices in his head. And it's hard for him to push back on this inner critic that's still in his head based on his parents' voices. And then little by little, he keeps evolving more and more because he's realizing that even though he has become very social and he's become more involved with the activities in his town, something is missing there because people don't understand what he's going through, fighting those demons in his head. So there's a complete evolution of this character throughout the story. And I really enjoyed that evolution because at the end, he's not the same person that he was when he started out. But it wasn't just a simple switch that, he was this way and now he's that way. It's a little more nuanced than that. And I like that. So there you have it. That is my take on topics I would like to see more of in books. And I just want to thank Wick Calloway for coming up with this brilliant topic of conversation. And I hope that more booktubers pick this up so we can keep this conversation going. Till next time, happy reading!